Holy sonnets, anniversaries, paradoxes and problems, prose work. Holy sonnets, anniversaries, paradoxes and problems, prose work. The most famous poem of John Donne, The Flea, The Good Morrow. Holy sonnet, Death, Be Not Proud. The canonization, A valediction forbidding morning, The sun rising, Go and catch a falling star. The most famous poems of John Donne, The Flea, The Good Morrow, Holy sonnet, Death, Be Not Proud, canonization, valediction forbidding morning, The sun rising, Go and catch a falling star, Good Morrow, and Holy sonnet. Satires. He ridicules everything conventional and serious. Songs and Sonnets, volume of his selected poems, 2 years after his death. Holy Sonnets, Anniversaries, Paradoxes and Problems, prose work. Go and Catch a Falling Star was first printed under the title Song. Go and Catch a Falling Star. So, under the title Song. It was published in the volume of Songs and Sonnets. Published in the volume of Songs and Sonnets after the death of poet John Donne's work is divided into two main categories: love poems and divine poems. It is generally considered one of the love poems of John Donne. It is generally considered one of the love poems of John Donne. This is a love poem. Donne's attitude towards women is not so good. He believed that beautiful women are generally morally corrupt, a false belief. This cynical attitude to the fair sex is found mostly in the early poems of Donne. In the later poem, we find a rational attitude. Falling star symbolizes for a true and faithful woman. One cannot catch a falling star. Therefore, he also cannot find a loyal woman in the world. For Donne is the most difficult task. Theme of the poem: the inconstancy of women, unfaithfulness of. This poem is highly ironical, simultaneously symbolic. The poet has used colloquial style in the poem. The poet has used colloquial style in the poem. Metaphysical features found in the poem: arguments and analysis, less emotional and more intellectuals, uses of conceit, unusual comparisons, full of rich ideas, more matters, less words, arises from moments of experience or situation, real, arises from moments of experience or situation, real. Metaphysical features found in the poem: arguments and analysis, less emotional and more intellectual. Structure of the poem: John Donne enforced a tight structure of his song Go and Catch a Falling Star with 3 stanza, each containing sestet with a rhyme scheme of A B A B C C, and concluding with a rhyming triplet that controlled format contrast with the light tone used throughout, appropriate to a song about romance. John Donne enforced a tight structure. Go and Catch a Falling Star with 3 stanza, each containing sestet with a rhyme scheme of A B A B C C, and concluding with a rhyming triplet. 3 stanza with 6 lines. Controlled format contrast with the light tone used together, appropriate to be a song about romance. Title is the first line of the poem, usual characteristic of most Donne's poem. 9 lines consist of varied syllable. 3 stanza rhyme A B C C triple D. Lyrical meant for singing, dramatic monologue, extended metaphysical conceit, light and humorous tone, cynical and satirical, light and humorous tone, cynical and satirical. Theme: inconsistency of women, infidelity in a spiritual view, about fallen humanity. Speaker, a man who disbelieves in faithful women, suggesting male chauvinism. Suggesting male chauvinism. Figure of speech literary device used in the poem. Donne has employed many poetic devices such as allusion, alliteration, hyperbole, imagery, and metaphor in this poem. As commonly seen in metaphysical poetry, diverse images have been used to exaggerate the difficulty in finding a beautiful and faithful woman. Allusion, alliteration, hyperbole, imagery, and metaphor. Metaphor, falling star, falling of an angel, refers to the falling of Lucifer, who fell from the heaven to hell. From heaven to hell because of betrayal of the god, refers to the women who fell from virtue to fidelity. Allusion, mandrake root, a human shaped root which is commonly associated with witchcraft. Devil's cleft foot, mermaid singing, related to sirens, who are mythical creatures, consist of a human head and body like a bird, found in Homer's Odyssey. Mermaid singing, related to sirens, who are mythical creatures, consist of a human head and body like a bird, found in Homer's Odyssey. Allusion, mandrake root, a human shaped root associated with witchcraft, devil's cleft foot, found in Homer's Odyssey. Visual imagery, falling star, caesura, a pause, which is a rhythmical pause in a poetic line or a sentence, gives a lyrical value and dramatic nature to the poem. And find what wind, yet do not, I would not go, implies hesitation, yet she will be provides time for the reader to think and enter the final argument. The extended conceit, which is seemingly impossible, generates the first half of the comparison to depict the impossibility to find a woman who is fair and honest. Hyperbole, 10,000 days and nights, 27 years. 10,000 days and night, 27 years. Go and get a falling star. Get with child, a mandrake root. Tell me where all past years are, or who cleft the devil's foot. Teach me to hear mermaids singing, or to keep off envy's stinging, and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind. If thou best born to strange sights, things invisible to see, ride 10,000 days and nights, till age snow white hairs on thee. Thou, when thou returnest, wilt tell me all strange wonders that befell thee, and swear nowhere lives a woman true and fair. If thou findest one, let me know, such a pilgrimage were sweet. Yet do not, I would not go, though at next door we might meet, though she were true when you met her, and last till you write your letter, yet she will be false ere I come to 2 or 3. This is the salient feature of metaphysical poetry, the use of conceit, unusual comparison. The use of conceit. What is conceit? Unusual comparisons. In the second stanza, the poet says, if the reader has the ability to see strange sights or to see things invisible, then he should go 10,000 days and nights till he has hair white with age in search of a woman who is both true and fair, or beautiful as well as faithful. The speaker says even after such drawn out journey, he would still come and say that it was impossible to find such a woman. The last stanza begins with the poet saying that if the reader somehow found such a woman, it would be a rewarding pilgrimage to even go and see such a unique woman. And then again, he asks the reader not to let him know of the existence of such a woman, even if she lived next door, as she would prove to be unfaithful. At least two or three men, by the time the reader wrote a letter to the speaker about her, although she should she would prove to be unfaithful. At least two or three men by the time the reader wrote a letter to the speaker about her, although she could have been both true and fair. When the reader first found her, note that the poet gets involved with the reader as we and isolate women as she, depicting male chauvinism. The conclusion of the central argument is brought out in the last two lines, the impossibility to find a woman who is true and fair. Jazz of the Eunuchs. Eunuch Kamla Das. Kamla Das, Malayalam pen name Madhvi Kutti, Muslim name Kamla Suraya, born March 31, 1934. Born in March 31. March 31. Kamla Das. Born in 31 March. (1934). now in Kerala, died in 31 May 31, 2009. 31 May 2009. Indian author who wrote openly and frankly about female experience of being an Indian woman. She was an Indian poet in English as well as an author in Malayalam from Kerala, India. Her popularity in Kerala is based chiefly on her short stories and autobiography, while in English is noted for the poems and explicit autobiography. Kamala Das is essentially known for her bold and frank expression. The prominent features of her poetry are an acute obsession with love and the use of confession. The main theme of her poetry is based upon freedom, love, and protection. The main theme of her poetry is based upon freedom, love, and protection. Kamala Das was a confessional poet whose poems have often been considered at par with those of Anne Sexton and Robert Lowell. Anne Sexton and Robert Lowell. Kamala Das was a confessional poet whose poems have often been considered at par with those of Anne Sexton and Robert Lowell. Her writing, whether in English or Malayalam, had a strong feminist leaning, and she didn't shy away from discussing in her stories and poems Her writing consisted of vivid description of menstruation, puberty, love, lust, lesbian encounters, child marriage, infidelity, etc. She is rightly considered to be the mother of modern Indian English poetry. Her poems reflect the urge for change in society. The women should also be given the same status as that of men. So rightly her poetry may be labeled as the poetry of protest. The women should also be given the same status. So rightly her poetry may be labeled as the poetry of protest. Poetry of protest. Major work. Das's poetry collection included Summer in Calcutta, 1965, The Descendant, 1967, and The Old Playhouse and Other Poems, 1973. Old Playhouse and Other Poems, 1973. Subsequent English language works included the novel Alphabet of Lust, 1976. English language works included the novel Alphabet of Lust, 1976, and the short stories A Doll for the Child Prostitute, 1977, and Padmavati and Harlot, 1992. Perhaps her best known work was an autobiography which first appeared as a series of columns in the weekly Malayalam, then in Malayalam as Ente Katha, 1971, and finally in English as My Story, 1976. It was hot, so hot, before the eunuchs came to dance wide skirts going round and round camels, richly clashing and ankle jingling, jingling, jingling. Beneath the fiery Gulmohar, with long braids, flying dark eyes flashing, they danced and they danced. They danced and they danced. Oh, they danced. Oh, they danced uh, till they bled. There were green tattoos on their cheeks, jasmine in their hair. Some were dark and some were almost fair. Their voices were harsh, their songs melancholy. They sang of lovers dying and or children left unborn. Some beat their drum, other beat their sorry breast, and wailed and writhed in vacant ecstasy. They were thin in limbs and dry, like half-burnt logs from funeral pyres. A drought and a rottenness were in each of them. Even the crows were so silent on trees, and the children wide-eyed still. All were watching these poor creatures' convulsions, shaking movements. Poor creature, it is a metaphor. Wide eyed, wonder struck. The sky crackled. Crackled, onomatopoeia. Hey, okay. Dark eyes flashing, maybe with tears. There were green, sixth line है. Green tattoos वाली sixth line है. The sky crackled, then thunder came, and lightning, and rain. A misery rain that smelt of dust in attics and urine of lizards and mice. Introduction included in the collection Summer in Calcutta, the very first volume, 1965. The first poem in this volume, Dance of the Eunuchs, is one of the most remarkable poems of Kamala Das. This is another autobiographical poem written in confessional style that symbolically portrays the poetess' personal melancholy in her own life. The poem, The Dance of the Eunuchs by Kamala Das, is quite symbolic and confusing. The poet, who is a victim of patriarchal society, talks about the dance of transgenders. The transgenders are too a victim of the social norms which alienates them from being treated as normal humans. The transgenders, being socially excluded, either dance, sing, or beg to earn their living. However, their dance and songs have no joy for rhythm of sweetness. They try their best to look beautiful, yet the society looks down them. Now, as mentioned above, the poem has profound meaning. The poet compares her own condition with that of eunuchs or transgenders. Like the transgenders, she, as a woman, is also looked down by the patriarchal society. She may seem to be enjoying the life by her appearance, but internally she is joyless, lonely, and struggling. The eunuchs is here thus a metaphor for barrenness, unproductiveness, frustration. The poem has no strangers. However, I have divided it into three parts. This poem has no stranger. The poet talks, discusses. The poet talks the attractive things which eunuchs use or show in order to attract the people who may give them money. In the second part, she talks about the inabilities and the joyless inner self. In the mind, in the third part, the rain comes, which is boon as well as bane for them. Attractive things. First part में, second part में, inabilities, joyless inner self. Third part, which is rain, and that is proved bane and boon for them. The poet says that it was hot, so hot. When the eunuchs came to dance, the line means that the eunuchs came to dance in a hot day. To dance, though it was quite hot, poet repeats the word hot in order to show the intensity. They came because they need money to exist in the world. They were dancing their white skirts, they were wearing, and thus the female appearance was also going round and round. Some of them had cymbals which they were striking against each other to produce a sound effect for dancing. As they were dancing, their anklets were jingling, jingling, and jingling. Kamala Das's words are producing a similar sound to that of anklets. They were dancing under a reddish gulmohar tree. It was a quite beautiful tree. Their long braids were flying in the air. Their dark eyes were flashing, perhaps with tears. They were continuously dancing until they could. The poet uses a phrase, till they bled, to show that they had to keep dancing to get money from people nobody cares for their pain. The eunuchs and their best to do makeup in order to look a little human-like, as they are treated like aliens. They had green tattoos. They used green color, perhaps in order to show joy, on their cheeks and jasmine flowers in their hairs. Some of them were black, while others fair. However, for society, there is no difference between the two. Both are ugly in our eyes. Note that the poet has shown two signs of harshness so far. First, the very hot weather, and second, the eunuch's compulsion to dance until they give up because of bleeding. In the second part comes the harsh reality. It is their inabilities, disabilities, and the things which alienate them. According to the poet, their voices were harsh as they had both males as well as females characteristics, not sweet, and their songs quite sad. They were singing about the dying lovers and the children which did not born. The line is quite interesting and confusing. The transgenders are sterile and are still narrating the stories of those having proper males and female traits. Some of them are beating their drums, while other their breast, which the poet calls a sorry breast. because they are of no use to them. Neither a man is interested in giving them the sexual pleasure, nor they can produce milk, thus they lack both these blessings. Thirdly, they might be disordered. They were wailing and writhing in vacant ecstasy. It is they were making cries and irregular movements, singing and dancing but deadly. Without any joy, their limbs were thin and looked like half burnt logs, wood from the funeral pyres. Their body looked dry and rotten. These symbols depict their miserable condition. Transgenders are poor, live in unhygienic conditions, and without proper food or other basic things like house, pure water, etc. Hence, they seem to be dead like. While they were dancing, the crows were silent on their condition, while the children were watching them with amazement. In India, crow is a symbol of doom, but here, even the doomed creature is silent because they are treated worse than the crow. On the other hand, the children have not seen them and hence seem to be alien to them. Part 3. While the people were watching their irregular dance, poet calls them a poor creature because of their miserable condition. The sky was covered with thundering clouds and soon it started lightning, which was followed by rain. The rain was meagre, it is very less of short duration, though it brought sweet smell of dust. In the attics, the bad smell of urine of lizard and mice was also there. The line have deeper meaning. The poet tells two different aspects of rain. First, it was blessing. It was blessing because it was very hot and people wanted relief. However, on the other hand, it was bane for the eunuchs because they were dancing for earning their livelihood, and because of this rain, the people might have ran away. Thus, something which is blessing for the normal humans can be curse for those poor transgenders. The poem ends. Summer in Calcutta, 1965. The Descendant, 1967. The Old Playhouse and Other Poems, 1973. Alphabet of Lust, 1976. It's a novel. Alphabet of Lust. It's a novel. A Doll for the Child Prostitute, 1977. It is a short story. Padmavati the Harlot. It is also a short story, 1992. In the poem Go and Catch a Falling Star, the protagonist, to meet a true woman, to see the devil's foot, to hear mermaids singing, to meet a true woman. Go and Catch a Falling Star explores a misogynistic theme of Dunn's era. Misogynistic theme of Dunn's era. Women's romanticism, infidelity. In the poem, the protagonist wishes to meet a true, fair, and faithful woman. Using vivid images of magic and mystery, the speaker insists that a faithful woman is very hard to find. In the poem Go and Catch a Falling Star, how many days? 10,000 days and nights. If thou be Be best, born to strange sights, things invisible to see, bright 10,000 days and nights. Till age snow white hairs on thee, thou when thou returns to will tell me all strange wonders that befell thee and swear nowhere lives. In the second stage of the poet series, if the theme of the dance poem Go and Catch a Falling Star is the impossibility of the tone of Dunn's poem Go and Catch a Falling Star is cynical, sarcastically, and cynically. That is, how many impossible tasks Dunn does Dunn enumerate in the 7 to depict the impossibility to find a woman? 7 challenges. How far does Dunn in his poem? The novel tells of the rise and fall of Michael Henchard, who, starting from nothing after abandoning his wife and daughter, enters Casterbridge as a hairdresser, gains prosperity and respect, and it reunited with his family only to lose everything through his own wrong headedness, his vengeful nature, and a spat of bad luck. Finally, he leaves Casterbridge as the novel tells the rise and fall of Michael Henchard, who, starting from nothing after abandoning his wife and daughter, enters Casterbridge as a hairdresser, gains prosperity and respect, and is reunited with the family only to lose everything through his own wrong headedness, his vengeful nature, and a spat of bad luck. Finally, he leaves Casterbridge as a hairdresser. A group of rustic provides us with a commentary on the doings of the major characters, which is very evident in the novel The Mayor of Casterbridge. This group consists of Solomon Longways, Christopher Coney, Busford, all of these four. A group of rustic provides us with a commentary on the doings of the major characters, which is very evident in the novel The Mayor of Casterbridge. In this novel, this group of rustics are consisting of Solomon Longways, Christopher Coney, Mother Cuxtom, Nancy Mockridge, Busford, and others. A horse drill in the novel The Mayor of Casterbridge is new fashioned agriculture implement vehicle bought by Lucetta. It is a new fashioned agriculture implement called a horse drill. Then unknown, it is modern shape. This part of the country where venerable seed lip was still used to sowing as it in the days of the heptarchy. The farmers crowded The farmers crowded round it, women drew near it, children crept under and into it. Farfrey praised the working of the machine and said that it would be revolutionize and method of sewing. Henchard explained it in a ridiculous way. In the Mayor of Casterbridge, High Place Hall is Lucetta's residence. High Place Hall is a Palladian mansion. Is a Palladian mansion in the Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge that is occupied by Lucetta Templeman, an assumed name for Henchard, former friend from Jersey. The house overlooks the marketplace and is the setting for several key events in the novel. That performance of their killed her, but kept me alive. Which performance killed them? Skimity Ride, Lucetta. The quote is in reference to effigies of Lucetta and Henchard, which were constructed and paraded through town to symbolizes improper relationship. Lucetta panics and faints. She saw effigies, which eventually leads to the death. Henjard was remarrying Susan on account of his ardent love, but because of three large resolves, which one of the following was not among them: to make amends for his neglected Susan, to provide a comfortable home for Elizabeth Zane under his parental eye. Hansard was remarrying Susan on account of his ardent love, but because of three large resolves, which one of the following was not: to have a pleasure, to castigate himself with the thorns, no, it's not, to make amends for his neglected Susan, to provide a comfortable home for Elizabeth Zane under his parental eye, to have the pleasure of a married, or to castigate himself with the thorns. Hansard was remarrying Susan on account of his ardent love, but because of three large resolves: one, to make amends for his neglected Susan; another, to provide a comfortable home for Elizabeth Zane; um, and third, to castigate himself with the thorns. Whom does Henchard confide the story of his affairs with a lady in Jersey? Henchard confides, Joshua Job. Henchard confides in Farfrey about his past affairs. Henchard reveals that he has become involved with another woman in Jersey, where he once traveled on business. He adds that their affair caused quite a scandal in Jersey, quite a scandal, for which the women suffered greatly. To make amends, Henchard proposed to her on the condition that she run the risk of his first wife being alive. The women accepted, but now that Susan has returned, he regrets that he will have to disappoint the women in Jersey. Farfrey assures him that the situation cannot be helped and offers to help Henchard write a letter breaking off relation with the Jersey women. Confides in Farfrey about his past. Who tells Henchard that Elizabeth Zane has worked as a waiter at the Three Mariners? Who tells Henchard? Elizabeth Zane was very considerate to Nancy Mockridge, the maid servant. One day, Henchard saw Elizabeth Zane herself serving Nancy and reprimanded his daughter for this. Nancy retorted and told him that she had seen Elizabeth waiting and people who were worse than her at the Three Marinas. नैन्सी मॉकरिज ने कहा कि इसने तो हमसे भी डाउन लोगों को सर्व किया है हर एट द थ्री मराइनर्स में. Elizabeth Zane, who came back with Susan, was not Henchard's daughter. Elizabeth Zane, who came back with Susan, was not Henchard's daughter. Henchard's own daughter had died. Henchard and Susan's separation at wedding priors. Henchard and Susan. 3 months after. I can hardly write it, but here it is. Elizabeth Zane is not your Elizabeth Zane, the child who was in my arms when you sold me. No, she died 3 months after that. And this living one is my other husband's. I christened her by the same name we had given to the first, and she filled up the ache I felt at the other's loss. Michael, I am dying, and I might have held my tongue, but I could not. Susan writes this in her letter to Henchard. Lucetta was the daughter of prominent lawyer in Jersey, late military officer. Lucetta was the daughter of a late military officer who informed Susan about Henchard's vow of never to touch intoxicating drinks. Solomon Abelwittel Joshua Job. It is Solomon Longways who informs Susan, जिसने Susan को बताया about Henchard's vow कि Henchard ने कसम खाई है of never to touch. Solomon Susan को बताया. Solomon Longways to Susan. Her affair with Farfrae in order to. How does Lucetta react when Henchard demands that she end her affair with Farfrae in order to marry him? She tells him that she will love whomever she chooses. She denies having an affair, fearing that her reputation will be further damaged by scandal. She agrees and gives up Farfrae. She agrees never to see Farfrae. ये तो वो नहीं था. तो 189. That she will choose whoever she chooses. What ulterior motive prompts Lucetta to invite Elizabeth Zane to live with her? She thinks. What ulterior motive prompts Lucetta to invite Elizabeth Zane to live with her? She thinks Elizabeth Zane will ensure frequent visit from Henchard. She has heard that Elizabeth Zane is a skilled housekeeper and needs help maintaining her estate. She hopes to subjugate Elizabeth Zane's budding romance with Farfrae. In the Mayor of Casterbridge, Lucetta invites Elizabeth Zane to live with her to ensure that Henchard will visit her frequently. Lucetta also refers to the argument as a practical joke. Lucetta also refers to the argument. as a practical joke. Frequent visit. Which of the following is not true? Soon after Newson had purchased Susan and Elizabeth Zane, they all had left Canada. Soon after Newson had purchased Susan, they stayed in Canada for 15 years. After returning from Canada, they settled in Falmouth. Later, the new family, Susan Newson and Elizabeth Zane, traveled to Canada and stayed there for 12 years before returning to England. When Susan told Newson that she could no longer live with him, he left on a trade ship and was lost at sea. While Susan gained peace of mind from her husband's death. Susan gained peace of mind from her husband's death. She wanted to make a better life for Elizabeth Zane. Returning Michael might give the women a better life, and Susan planned the trip specifically to find Michael. Exam 2. Why does Susan insist on keeping hiding the fact that Elizabeth Zane does course in exchange for a room at the inn? Keeping hiding the fact does course in exchange of room at the inn. She fears that news of her daughter's duties will reach the mayor and bring shame on him. She is embarrassed by Elizabeth Zane's clumsiness and awkward manners. Why does Susan insist on? Susan is concerned that the mayor will be shamed if the town finds out about Elizabeth Zane's score. Susan wants to maintain an air of respectability, and she regrets allowing Elizabeth Zane to do course to pay for their room. Susan may be embarrassed by Elizabeth Zane's clumsiness and awkward manners. She may also want to spare Elizabeth Zane from the wrath of the innkeepers. 186. She fears that news of her daughter's duties will reach the mayor and bring shame on him. Wessex, presented by Hardy, is a The Mayor of Casterbridge is one of the Hardy's Wessex novels. It is set in a fictional rural England, with Casterbridge standing in for Dorchester in Dorset, where the author spent his youth. Dorchester. Wessex, presented by Hardy, is Dorsetshire, Casterbridge, Cambridge, all of these. 184. 184 by 1. Dorsetshire. For Dorchester in Dorset. Hardy's philosophy is considered as that of a optimistic, pessimistic, fatalist, both B and C. Pessimistic and fatalist. Hardy's philosophy dramatizes the human condition as a struggle between man and man, and between man and his fate. Usually, it is fate or the arbitrary force of the universe that wins. Fate is all powerful, and in its blindness, human suffering of no importance. The Mayor of Casterbridge is a perfectly representative novel of Hardy, and it authentically conveys his gloomy and tragic and pessimistic views of life. 183. 183. 4. Hardy's philosophy was both pessimistic and fatalist. Pessimistic and fatalist. Hardy belongs to great novelist Victorian era. Hardy belongs to Victorian era. Thomas Hardy belongs to Victorian era. Hardy was also an accomplished poet. Hardy was born on 2nd June 1840 in Upper Bockhampton near Dorchester in Dorsetshire, England. He passed most of his long life in this region of woodland, heath and moor. Heath and moor. It forms the setting of most of his writings under its old name of Wessex. His first really successful novel, published serially in 1874, was Far from the Madding Crowd. Others are Under the Greenwood Tree, 1872. First really successful novel. Serially in 1874. Far from the Madding Crowd, Under the Greenwood Tree, The Return of the Native, 1878. Test of the Day, Europe, Arbor Wills, 1891, and Jude the Obscure, 1895. His poetry includes Wessex poems, 1898, and Times Logging Stocks, 1909. The Dynast, 1903 and 8, is an epic drama in the 3 parts. The Dynast, 1903 and 8, is an epic drama in 3. 2nd June 1840. He was born in 1840, Dorchester, England. Who meet at Durnover Hill after receiving similar letters. Who meet at Durnover. Henchard and Susan. Henchard and Susan. One day Elizabeth then receives a note requesting her to come immediately to a greenery on Durnover Hill. Elizabeth Zane received a letter to go to Durnover Hill. She goes there, and as she is waiting, Donald Farfrae arrives, too shy to meet him, then alone. There alone, Elizabeth Zane hides as the rain falls. Donald waits patiently until Elizabeth Zane reveals her presence by accidentally dislodging some wheat husk. After Donald acknowledges her presence, they both realize that someone else has sent them the identical letters. Donald believes that someone has played a trick upon them and that Elizabeth Zane should not mention it in the future. He helps her remove the wheat husk from her clothing before she departs. It is obvious that he is affected by her beauty. Farfrae Elizabeth Zane. Dover Hill. Farfrae Elizabeth Zane. Identify the character who is nicknamed by some boys as the ghost. Susan was so pale that the boys called her the ghost. Sometimes Henchard overheard this epithet when they passed together along the walks. Who is nicknamed by some boys as the name Ghost 180. 3. Susan. Susan was so pale that the boys called her the ghost. Whom does Susan send to Henchard to inform him about the arrival of his wife? Waiter Elizabeth Zane. Farfrae. Whom does Susan send to Henchard? Arrival of his wife. Susan decides to send Elizabeth Zane to Henchard to tell him his relative, a sailor's widow, has arrived in Casterbridge. Susan's motives are twofold. Henchard has been described as a lonely widower, and he has expressed shame for his previous behavior. Susan instructs Elizabeth Zane to tell Henchard if he is interested in meeting with the widow, to write Susan a note telling how and when a reunion may be arranged. Elizabeth Zane को भेजा. Decides to send Elizabeth Zane. Where does Farfrae intended to leave for after meeting with Henchard? Where does Farfrae intend to leave for after meeting with Henchard? 178. Bristol. To try his fortune in the great wheat growing districts of the West, is hired by Henchard to work as his business manager in his wheat and corn business in Casterbridge. What kind of business? Wheat and corn business in Casterbridge. Who is an accomplished musician who captivated the hearts of men and women by the rapture of his melody. Who is an accomplished musician, captivated the hearts of men and women. Donald Farfrae, an accomplished musician who captivated the hearts of men and women by the rapture of his melody. Donald Farfrae. Who asked Mrs. Stanage for a part-time job as a waitress in Three Mariners Hotel? Who asked Mrs. Stanage for a part-time job as a waitress in Three Mariners Hotel? Elizabeth Zane. Elizabeth Zane asked Mrs. Stanage, the owner of Three Mariners Hotel, Three Mariner Hotel is Mrs. Stanage. Mrs. Stanage, who was presiding over the prestigious dinner party in King's Arm. Who was presiding? Hanchard was presiding over the prestigious dinner party in King's Arm. King's Arm. Susan first see Hanchard after 18 years presiding over the prestigious dinner. King's Arm is the inn at which Susan first sees Henchard after 18 years. After 18 years, presiding over the prestigious dinner as mayor. Was presiding over. Where did Newson family settle in England? Susan and the sailor Newson lived for about 12 years in Canada and then returned to England. Near about 12 years in Canada and returned to England, Falmouth. Susan's daughter Elizabeth Zane knows nothing about Michael Henchard or Susan's sale to Newson. She believes that her mother is Newson's daughter. Okay. Newson are married. Her mother is Newson's, and Newson are married, and that she is Newson's daughter. Susan had confided in a friend about her past. Confided in a friend about her past, and that she was not legally married to Newson. The friend made Susan understand that she was not bound to Newson in any way. That is, that her sale was illegal and did not obligate her to Newson or make their arrangements legal. Susan was upset by this new perspective on her situation and told Newson that she didn't know if she could continue living with him. On his next trip to sea, Newson was reported lost and presumed dead. Susan and Elizabeth Zane then set out to find Michael Henchard. She could continue living with him. इंग्लैंड में कहाँ रहते थे? फॉलमाउथ में. Where did Henchard decide? Where did Henchard decide to spend the money he received from the sailor after selling his wife Susan? On drinking in the prosecution of the search of his wife for furmity shop for buying a horse, Henchard decided to spend the sailor's money in the prosecution of this search, but it was equally in vain. He decides to search for his wife and child, and when he finds them, try to live with his shame. But first he goes to a church and swears an oath before an altar that he will not touch strong drink for the space of 21 years, a year for every year that I have lived. He begins the search for his wife and child, but no one has any recollection of having seen them. His search lasts for months until, having carried his quest to a seaport, he learns that persons answering somewhat to his description had emigrated a little time before. He abandons his search and journeys southwestward, not stopping until he reaches the town of Casterbridge in a distant part of Wessex. Southward, not stopping until reaches the town of Casterbridge in a distant part. What was the title? What was a little shining object which Henchard discerned when he awoke the next morning of the auction of his wife? That was his wife's ring. Among the odds and ends, he discerned a little shining object and picked it up. It was his wife's ring. Which of the following was not the theme of the conversation of several persons in the tent? The furmity women. The conversation took a high turn, as it often does on such occasions. Which of the following was not the theme of the conversation of several persons in the tent of the furmity women? Futility and abuses of marriage, ruin of good man by bad wives. The conversation took a high turn, as it often does on such occasion. The ruin of good man by bad wives. Ruin of good men by bad wives. More particularly, the frustration many a promising youth's high aims and hope that the extinction of his energies by an early imprudent marriages was the theme. Opening chapter of the novel. Name the liquor poured in the furmity of Henchard. In the tent, Michael pays the furmity women, a haggish creature of about 50, to spike his basin of furmity within large doses of rum. He quickly finished a number of well-raised portions and in a quarrelsome mood begins to bewail the fact that he has ruined his life by marrying too young. What was written on the placard of refreshment tent in which Henchard and his wife entered? Good home brewed beer, ale and cider. They, Henchard and Susan, looked around for a refreshment tent among many which dotted the down to. Looked around for a refreshment tent among the many which dotted the down to, which stood nearest to them in the ochreous haze of expiring sunlight seemed almost equally inviting. One was formed of new, milk-hued canvas and bold red flags on its summit. It announced good home-brewed beer, ale and cider. The other was less new. A little iron stovepipe came out of it at the back, and in front appeared the placard, good furmity sold here. The men mentally weighed the two inscriptions and inclined to the former tent. No, no, the other one, said the women. I always like furmity. And so does Elizabeth Zane. And so will you. It is nourishing after a long, hard day. I have never tasted it, said the man. However, he gave way to her representations, and they entered the furmity booth forthwith. 169. Question number 169. 169. Good furmity sold here. But my punishment is not greater than I can bear. Who utters these words in the novel The Mayor of Casterbridge? I can go alone, as I deserve, an outcast and a vagabond, but my punishment is not greater than I can bear. Michael Henchard, chapter first. Although Henchard suffers terribly, he says to himself, but my punishment is not greater than I can bear. Who are married at the end of the novel? At the end of the novel, Elizabeth Zane marries Donald Farfrey and Michael Henchard exiles himself from Casterbridge, eventually dying in the cottage of a former employee, Abel Meetle. Who dies after seeing the procession of scimitar? Who dies? Lucita. Who are married at the end of the novel? Lucita and Farfrey, Elizabeth Zane and Farfrey, too. In The Mayor of Casterbridge are the characters who exhibit villainous tendencies. In The Mayor of Casterbridge, Job and Mrs. Goodenough. Sit down here. Job and Mrs. Goodenough. Villainous tendencies. Christopher Coney, Nancy Mockridge, Mother Cuxham, and Solomon Longways. In The Mayor, Casterbridge, friends and Farfrey, friends, peasants. Christopher Coney, Nancy Mockridge, Mother Cuxham, and Solomon Longways. In The Mayor of Casterbridge are peasants. Which of the following is true? Farfrey, the young Scotchman, serves as a foil, a character whose action or emotion contrast with the thereby accentuate those of another character. For Henchard, Farfrey's business efficiency, good humor, and polish make him extremely popular among the town's citizens. When Henchard's successor as a mayor dies suddenly, Farfrey becomes mayor. All of these are true. What happens to Henchard at the end of the novel? Henchard dies. Henchard gets prize? No. Henchard becomes manager? No. Henchard dies. Which of the following is true about Richard Newson? He is a gracious sailor who buys Susan Henchard and the first Elizabeth Zane from Henchard. Newson and Elizabeth Zane are reunited despite Henchard's lie that Elizabeth Zane has died. It's true, no? He dances joyfully at Elizabeth Zane's wedding to Farfrey and lives with the newly wed couple. All of these are true. Nancy Mockridge tells Henchard that Elizabeth Zane had once worked as a waitress in a pub that irritates Henchard. Name the pub hotel. There, Elizabeth Zane once serves as a waitress to lower the cost of the room. Susan and Elizabeth Zane arrive at the Three Mariners Inn and take a room. Fearing that the accommodations are too expensive, Elizabeth Zane offers to serve as a waitress to lower the cost of the room and meal. The Three Mariners. I will love him, she cried passionately. As for him, he is hot tempered and stern, and it would be madness to bind myself to him, knowing that I won't be a slave of the past. I will love where I choose. Who utters these words? Visita passionately exclaims.